Hey, welcome to this edition of the Contractor Commute. We are here with Ben Walsh. My name is Drew Williams, and today we're going to be talking about establishing a financially healthy contracting business. So there's a lot that goes into that, but we're going to talk about what does it take to create financial health in the contracting business. And one thing that we were talking about, Ben, earlier is starting with the why. Why did we get into this business? Why are we here? It's easy sometimes to lose the motivation or the original reason why you got into something. And normally when you get lost in the weeds or, get caught up in it or you start to become unhealthy, you got to go back to the why. So that's where we're gonna spend our time today.
Yeah. And it's a lot of times those first early moments, we have there's novelty, it's exciting, there's so much potential and opportunity ahead of us.
Going out on my own.
The sky's the limit.
Yeah.
More money, more time, freedom,
Yeah.
opportunity. This is just going to be awesome. What you can do in your own business and the impact you can have on the people around you, your community. There's just so much that seems so exciting, right?
Yeah.
And then, like you say, then you
Get
get
in
in the
it.
grind, and sometimes we lose that.
Yeah. Yeah. The grind sometimes you can get underneath that and you're not, it's grinding you. Like you get crushed, by
Right.
your own business. And so,
Mhm.
I mean, a lot of people fail because of that reason. So we talk about what is the dream? You talk about more money, more time and freedom and making an impact. But if we said, hey, what does a financially healthy business look like? What are the elements that you would say, hey, we're financially healthy? What are things that you would use as indicators to say yes or no, you're healthy?
Yeah, your bill collectors aren't carpooling when they come see you. So subcontractors, vendors, another indicator would be you have some reserve funds, you have some margins, some savings. I mean, what a huge psychological freedom that would be,
Yeah.
right? To have
Yeah.
some margin and be like, okay, well, things don't have to go perfectly this month. We're not,
Yeah.
in our prep, you're talking like one flat tire away from
Bankruptcy.
yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah,
I've been there personally.
yeah.
I've
Me
had
too.
seasons where I've got plenty and seasons where I don't. And you just sleep better at night when there's, money in the bank to cover an emergency or to cover a bad month.
Yep. Other part of a financially healthy contracting business would be the margin that you'd have in your personal life to be able to take those moments to spend time with family. You're not a slave to your business. You're able to do the fun things that you really wanted to do to begin with,
Yeah.
which is why you didn't want the 8 to 5 or 7 to 3 job to begin with, right?
Right.
I mean, you wanted to be able to set your own hours and do what you wanted to do.
Yeah. And part of that dream was for most anyone who started, part of their dream and their why was more time, more freedom, right?
Yep.
You have two currencies in life. You got money and time. Those are the two things that you're going to spend. And the ability to spend it where you want to spend it is the reason most people started. So yeah, so your bills are paid. You got savings, emergency fund, margin for personal hobbies and dreams. And I mean, what we're saying is like you own the business, but the business doesn't own you from
Yep.
a time perspective. Talk to me also about redundancy, right? Because part of getting your time back is you've got to find some redundancy. You can't be working 80-hour work weeks.
Yeah. And I have a lot of personal experience where I had moments and I felt like I was irreplaceable in my business, where if I didn't show up to work, it was going to be a disaster.
Yeah.
And that's not a great spot to be.
Yeah. It can feed your pride a little bit sometimes where it's like,
Absolutely.
where it's like, well, I got to do this. And,
You're saying, wait a second, you're saying I have pride?
I wasn't, I mean, yeah, I think you said that, but I just rephrased what you said. But I think, you've got,
No, it's good.
there can be an
Yeah.
element of your pride that's like, well, if you want it done right, you got to do it yourself.
Oh,
And
how many times have I said that to myself?
yeah. And sometimes there's a little bit of, it's because I'm so great at it, but that'll crush you.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's when in order to take time off, you got to be able to have trusted people that you can say
Mhm.
they're going to do a fantastic job. I can build these people up. And as you brought up, it does take the self-awareness and the humility to say,
Yeah.
I can't be everything in this business, and hire people that are better than we are, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's just, get
Yeah.
the right people in the right spots.
Yeah. Yeah, I think if you get those things right, your bills are paid. You got the savings fund. You've got margin for your personal hobbies and dreams. You've got redundancy, so you can take time off, or you don't have to work 70-hour work weeks. You could. I mean, everyone wants this that vision and why you started. Most people who are running a drill or swinging a hammer at 20, 30 years old don't plan on doing that at 60 or 70 years old. They view a future where they've built this business up and now they're running it, they're owning it. They might be calling the shots or guiding it or directing it, but physically working in the business all day, every day is not part of most people's long-term plan.
Agreed.
And to get there, yeah, you've got to have bills paid, margin, and you got to have redundancy, where you've built a team of people to get to that dream, to make it a reality. All right, so that's the dream. Like, let's get practical. How do we actually achieve it, right? So we had talked earlier about what's your vision, having a vision, which is where you want to be long term, having a plan of the things you're actually going to do to get there, and then having the discipline to do the thing that you need to do to get there. I think most people's why is very visionary. It's like, well, here's where I want to be 10 years from now. So let's talk about how to have a vision, how to have a plan, and then how to have the discipline to get from point A to point B. So starting with the vision, what are things that are important when you're creating a vision for where you want to be?
Yeah, let's start off with just making sure the vision is something that's actually not just a pipe dream as well. Are there specific, is the reason behind the vision good? I mean, is it something that's just so out there that it's like, if everything just works perfectly and we exceed every expectation possible and that's our goal, it's like, well, how are you going to get there? So we've all been around people that seem almost delusional or in a fantasy with their vision, and that's not vision. That's just, mental illness.
Yeah.
I mean, I've felt that it's like somebody says, "Hey, what's your goal for the next 20 years?"
I'm going to change the world.
Yeah, right. It's like, no, I mean, let's start with something more practical.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe you did change the world in some small way, but it's not specific. So visions need specificity.
Change your world.
Yes.
Right? Like, hey, I'm going to change the way that I live my life, or the way my parents said, I'm going to do it differently. Or like, here's what I'm trying to. A lot of times for people in this space, it's related to your family. It's like, hey, I'm going to try to do something for my kids or my family that maybe I didn't have, or some of those things are practical and big and achievable, but they're also not delusional. They can be done.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it's kind of maybe vision casting somewhat, of going towards the future somewhat, of 5 years, maybe that's too far ahead to think. Even 1 year down the road, 3 years down the road, what does that look like? For you or for me? It's just you put that down on paper and you start getting excited about it. Anytime I've ever done that, it seemed like kind of a rote exercise until I got into it. I was like, this is fun.
Yeah.
Think about 3 years from now, what should life look like? And then you got to go through the realms, right? You're looking at, in business, this is what it would look like, in personal life and family and relationships, and then impact.
Yeah. Talk to me about what it's like for the person who's lost their vision, the person who had it when they started, maybe they're 2, 3, 5 years in, they're like, I don't even know why I started this, but now I'm in it and I'm just trying to make ends meet and get from one month to the next. What's it like to operate a business with no vision?
It's an identity crisis, isn't it? I mean, where you just don't know who you are anymore, and the pressure just fuels more pressure, and you just can't sleep at night, and it's just this snowball effect. It gets out of control, and you have no idea where you're going and why you're going there, but you just know you've got customers that are going to be suing you if you don't get your jobs done.
Yeah.
And you have more bills to pay, so you better sell more jobs, even though you don't want to do it. So I think there's almost sometimes a moment of stepping back from all of that and saying, you know what, this is not the end of the world. Life goes on without me, and I need to take care of myself first, and I need to realign. So maybe even getting away for it a couple of days.
Yeah.
And just saying, why am I, if you're in that spot, which I think we can all identify with, is getting out and saying, go to a quiet place for a bit, get into nature, get by a stream, go out west, whatever it takes, and just spend some time and realize, man, life is really not about what I've been living.
Yeah. I think when you have to have when you don't have a vision of where you're going, then it's just managing the day to day, which will exhaust you. Like, it'll wear you out, and so
particularly if you don't want to be doing what you're doing. Like if yesterday sucked and today's just going to be awful, it's just you just pretty soon that pressure just wears you down, as you pointed out before.
Yeah. All right. So you create like a 5 to 10 year plan, like of, hey, where I want to be in an ideal state, right? And it's it's possible.
Specific, it's measurable, it's where you can actually, it's not, millions of dollars or whatever else. It's something that you say, okay, here's the plan. It needs to be close enough where you feel like you can make a plan to get there, right?
Yeah, yeah. Because I think
let's go to Mars.
Yeah, exactly. Well, what's the plan to get there? Yeah,
we don't have one.
So we have a vision, then it comes about the next step, which is actually like creating a plan of how you're going to get there. I've heard it said that creating a plan is what makes the possible probable, right? It's
That's
like
so good.
this is possible that I could one day be in this place 5 years from now. But vision without a plan is just a daydream or a fantasy. It's not going to happen, right? And so once you have an ideal state of where you want to be 5 to 10 years from now in your company's finances, in your team, all of those things are going to create the freedom of time and money that you want. Then it's about building a plan. To me, I think when you build a plan is much more black and white. Like it either happened or it didn't.
Yep.
Plan has yes or no's, and I'm going to go do these 10 things to get there. And it's measurable, right? It's not like, it's not these ethereal things. It's like I either did it or I didn't. So talk to me about building a plan and things that are practical. Okay, so now you got the vision, but what are things in your plan that need to be there from a time and money standpoint to get to your vision?
So for the sake of this podcast, we're going for a financially healthy contracting business. That's kind of our theme here today. And so there's a lot of other aspects of a business that should be a part of a plan. But today we're talking about what is the planning we need for a financially healthy business. And we identified some of these things that are important, like having the margin, having the savings, having, these things that are important, like, redundancy as an owner. So to achieve those goals as a part of a healthy contracting business, number one, we want the bills paid. We want the financial pressure off so we can be able to be creative and, think outside of the pressure, right? I mean, where we're able to just really achieve. And I think we need the markup to cover our overhead, number one. In order to cover your overhead, you got to know what it is.
Yeah, accurate.
Step one, yeah. And that requires some discipline to just make sure bills are entered, receipts are entered. And I mean, in my contracting business, when I was doing it myself, they stacked up. I mean, there was so many other pressures that seemed to be, I can do that later.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody's got to be doing that for you if you don't have the time to do it. And you probably shouldn't have the time to do it. I mean, it's like there's way more important things that really make an impact for your business. So getting accurate books, accurate records, having somebody managing all that for you. And then you got to know what you can output. What's the production? What can you produce as a business? You have 1 employee, 2 employees, no employees, use subcontractors. What can you manage? What can you produce as far as output? What can you bill? I guess another way of looking at production output is what can you bill for services in a given period of time? If that's a month, that means if it's all subcontracted work, you're managing that amount of resources over the period of a month and saying at the end of the month, I can bill for X number of dollars. $20,000 is your production output because that's what you can bill in that month for services that were rendered and fulfilled and people are happy with. So you need to know what you can produce, so the overhead is going to be a component of the markup, and then you need to know, then you need margin to cover that overhead. And having a measurable profit target, I think, is really important, right? I mean, if you don't know what you're shooting at, you get a bullseye every time.
Yeah.
You need to know, is it a 10% profit margin? What point are you comfortable? What are you going for as a business? If you're okay with a 1% profit margin, you're going to be okay with a customer saying, I'm not paying that bill, and you're saying, oh, okay, well, that's that.
Right.
Or you're going to take reductions, and if somebody gives you your estimate 65,000, and they say, how about 60, and you say, okay.
Right. Yeah.
You just want a job.
Yeah.
So knowing where you're at is super important. Knowing where you're going with the profit target, and then knowing what your overhead rate is, and there's some math in there that you might need somebody that I know how contractors just love math. I mean, sometimes it's the math, the geometry involved. I've seen carpenters are amazing at geometry, can build incredible things, curb stairs, whatever it is. But then when it comes down to balancing their checkbook, it doesn't happen for whatever reason. So, I think that's having the markup, having the margin there to cover your bills, super important.
It makes a lot of sense. I mean, thinking about it strategically like that, as opposed to just chasing cash flow every month. 65. How about 60? Yeah, I mean that's just chasing cash flow at that point. So it makes sense. So having markup, covering your margin. I think you also, might sound very basic, but having a budget is an important element too of a plan. Again, the vision's the fun dreaming thing, but without the budget of how you're going to get there, the possible will be impossible. But you can turn the possibility to probability. Part of that's having a budget and knowing what should be on there. So talking about what that process looks like, what that part of the plan looks like when you're creating a budget for your contracting business.
Budgets are those clunky things that get in the way of getting things done sometimes, but it's that discipline that we need to keep us in check when there's $150,000 in the account that we haven't necessarily earned yet, or we're going to need it to reinvest into our business, or whatever the number is, we can see, oh, let's go spend it.
Yeah.
Let's go buy a new truck, buy tools.
They're fun coupons.
Yeah.
That's what dollar bills are.
Yeah. So the budget is essentially saying in the aggregate across a year, a period of time, we're going to say this is where we're allocating our resources. And if we're outperforming our budget from an income standpoint, then we're going to say, well, how much of that goes where? Is that going into savings? And if you want that emergency fund, well, you got to put something in it. I mean, it seems very basic, but at the same time, what kind of percentage? Sometimes guys are going to take in a part of their gross revenue and putting it into an emergency fund. Saying, well, I'm going to take 2% of every dollar I take in, and I'm going to put it into an emergency fund. That's one way to do it.
Yeah, but if that job's not profitable, then that doesn't work.
Then, yeah, right. Then you're taking it right back out again.
Yeah.
And then you're getting a loan.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Psychology of pushing transfer to savings.
Yeah.
Makes you feel good.
Yeah, right. Well, there's that too. And that comes back to the markup part of things.
Right.
But yeah, the diligence in entering bills, receipts, knowing where you're at, I think you can't have a budget if you don't know where you're at, number one. And then being able to say, this is how much I'm going to reinvest back into my business. And here are the things that I have to have, and then making sure you're not just going out and buying whatever you want.
Yeah. Makes sense. So yeah, margin with dollars, we've got budget with dollars, but we said earlier, like you've got two resources, your money, but also your time. Let's talk about margin with time, right? Because I think, again, part of that dream is I'm not working 70, 80-hour work weeks, but I think a lot of people find themselves there where they're just not, it's just 7 days a week, doesn't stop. They eat, breathe, and sleep, work. And so while they might be, even if they're making good money, it doesn't matter because it's taking all of their time. And that, so we're talking about margin with time. What are ways of building a plan to put time back into your life? Because you can make all the money, but if you have no time, I've been there where you've got a lot of money and no time. It's not a lot of fun. You need to have both. So how do we make margin with our time to, again, achieve that vision of freedom?
Yeah, there's a few traps along the way there. One of the things that happened to me at one point is when I was starting the business, there was all this time, this capital you're essentially investing into the business. You're saying, I'm going to work 100 hours this week because at some point down the road, I won't need to work this hard. And so you're essentially saying, I'm borrowing from 2-3 years from now today, but then 2-3 years down the road, you never reconcile that account. You're still putting in the 100 hours a week because you got a habit going now. You're saying now the business needs this further growth and I'm needed for this, and you almost have a business plan that requires you to work 80 hours a week, and that's not viable. It's not sustainable. And so back to your point, if you can't scale yourself, you can't scale your business.
That's scaling yourself. Take that one another level. So what do you mean by scaling yourself?
Replicating, being able to delegate. You need to be able to say, what I do, somebody else can be done. And this is, the redundancy that you want in a business where I'm out of the office on vacation and things aren't falling apart. You hand it off. There's a nice peaceful transfer of power.
Yeah.
There aren't a bunch of problems that you just know you're coming back to when you get, who wants that?
Yeah.
On vacation, you realize the place just about blew up while you were gone.
Right.
Because all of the egos got going, you had the wrong people in the wrong spot. So I think that's when we're talking about scaling ourselves. It's just being able to say, as this business grows, I grow with it. And it's not just saying I'm working harder.
Right. Yeah. Because there's a finite capacity of your time and your stress, of just working nonstop. That's not good for your family. That's not good for the big picture.
Yeah.
We all know the person who's built a great business but lost their family in the process.
Wow.
And that's, not scalable.
Yeah.
So in order to replicate you and to scale yourself, that's, you've got to duplicate yourself. And I've heard it said that like you can teach people what you know, but you'll only ultimately reproduce what you are, right? And so you can teach people what you know about certain things, but you also have to model and create another you in a lot of ways. You've got to, and you do that by modeling. You do that over time. I think everyone's hired someone in, and even right now, especially finding people to do the work is extremely hard, much less someone who can lead the people who's finding the people to do the work, right? It's really challenging right now. So you do have to reproduce kind of who you are in the way you think about things, the way you see things, also with what you know. And that's a long process. I think that's when you're building teams, that's more farming than microwaving. Like you're not going to find that person off the street tomorrow that is going to do it the way you want it done.
Mm-hmm.
It takes time and investment and really, building team over time. So when it comes to building a team, what are things that you have to do intentionally over time to build team members up so that they can become you scaling yourself, so that you can delegate things, so that you can take a vacation? What are things when it comes to team building that come to mind for you?
Consistency, being the person that people can look up to and respect over time, where you're not flying off the handle when someone makes a mistake or does something that you don't agree with, where you're able to say, there's a certain level. If you're expecting commitment and you're expecting people to get behind who you are as a leader, they need to be able to be behind you, and that requires a certain level of humility, self-awareness, and ability to just say, you know what, we're in this together. But it's not just about you. It's about making that a vision that people can buy into as well, and just reiterating that as well. And I think the danger is in that whole, inconsistency can be where the rules change, the objectives change, what we're chasing changes. And so just being a person that's saying, you need to be firm. Some addictions can get in the way of this as well, right? If it's just... we all know scenarios where the boss says, well, where is he today? Well, he had a rough night. It's just being a person that people can trust, and a person that, realizing my boss has got my back.
Yeah.
And therefore I'm going to be looking out for him.
Yeah.
And so you can ruin that in minutes.
Yeah.
Years of equity can be gone in just some poor decisions.
Yeah. I've heard said that your charisma will take you through doors that your, character can't sustain you through. And sometimes the likability, the charm, the whatever, people follow you for a season, but then the closer they get to you, the more they realize your character is poor.
Wow.
Right. And so then you've now opened up a door, but you can't sustain it.
Yeah,
right.
so
and then you're cycling through people that don't want to work for you.
Yep.
Or they're constantly going to another company or doing, and then because the lack of self-awareness becomes, well, they're just flaky. They just don't want to work hard. Well, sometimes you got to start with looking in the mirror and be like, okay, what about the way I'm leading them caused them to be looking for another job while they were doing mine?
Yeah. So good.
And sometimes that's a tough question to ask, but a lot of times when you can't keep people, maybe the people aren't the problem. The common denominator sometimes is your leadership and your team building. Mm-hmm. So if we go back to planning, we define that as things that either you're doing or you're not. What are specific things that you would say could be measurable in a plan? Like what does a people plan look like? You've got a team of 2 or 3 people. What are specific intentional things that you can do to build a plan to create redundancy in yourself?
So what's the number one thing you think of when you're hiring, if you're pitching a job to somebody, and they're considering the opportunity, what's the number one thing that everyone talks about? Money.
Right.
What does it pay?
Yeah.
Then you realize in the position, it's one of the things that actually ranks well down the list of motivations.
Yeah.
And money it's great. It's nice to have a good paying job.
Yeah.
But if everything else is not in alignment, it's not worth it.
Right.
Some people quit a great job and just say, right. Yeah. Who do I know that's done that? So I think that's not the only medium we deal in is money. So I think that's, and that it's tempting because of that. If the team, like back to this toxic kind of culture where everything else is a part of, and then the boss is, I'm paying you great money. Right. Why am I not getting anything out of it? It's like, well, because that's not the only factor behind getting results. Yeah. In fact, it's ranking fourth or fifth in the list of other things. So I think that's something to remind ourselves of. It's not get cocky about, I'm paying you $5 an hour more than the other guy, and you should be, get out in there and get stuff done. It's like, no. Yeah. People, and that's even more offensive. Yeah. If a boss comes in there, I'm paying you great money, the first thing you're thinking is next job.
Right. Absolutely. Because then they just reduce that relationship down to a contractual agreement. Yeah. I do my part, you do yours. Yep. And when that is the way that the relationship with your people works, then the balances are leveled out every other Friday on payday. And the second after my paycheck clears, I don't think I owe you a thing. And I don't. Yeah. Because the scale's evened out. And it's like, I do my part, you pay me. I do my part, you pay me. If you're going to build a team and you're going to be able to scale yourself, you ultimately will need that person to buy into you and your vision more than just every other Friday, check clears the bank. We don't owe each other anything, starting over. It's a fresh 2-week contract. every single time that you reiterate how much you're paying somebody. And so what you're trying to do, and if you ever want to take a vacation and have that person eventually think like you think, work like you work, and be able to run your business the way that you would want to. So maybe you can actually go to your kid's soccer game or whatever the thing is. Like, you're going to need their commitment at a higher level than just what you're paying them.
So how does that work for you? I mean, what are the things that you're doing to get buy-in from people as you're? I mean, obviously you brought up earlier, there's a relationship. It takes time to get to the point where somebody can be trusted.
Yeah.
Maybe not just from a trust standpoint, from an experience and replicating yourself. There's maybe the things that require training and to get where you feel that you have that confidence in them. But where do you start, right?
I think you start with character both ways. I mean, you know, the best way to get someone to think that you really care about them is to actually really care about them. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the trick. And so I think you've got to, you have to, great leaders have hearts and smarts. Like, they know what they're doing, but they also put heart into their work. And, you can't take somewhere to a place you haven't been. Yeah. Right. And so, if you want someone to put head and heart into your work, then you've got to be modeling that, one, with how you work, what you do, but also how you treat them.
Yeah.
And I think that's where, like, if you treat people well and invest in them as people, they're more likely to invest in you as a person. And all of a sudden, now that person who's your right-hand person cares about you making it to your kid's soccer game.
Yeah.
Because you cared about them making it to theirs. Right. And then you can kind of create this relationship where it's like, hey, we're working together to build this vision. And you're also giving them opportunities to fail. You're giving them opportunities to grow. You're in their ear coaching them, giving them feedback when it goes great and when it doesn't, And I think when there's that honesty and transparency in how you're leading people, they're more likely to buy into you. I think it's John Maxwell says, you always ask for a man's heart before you ask for his hand. Right. And so you're getting them to buy into the vision of where you're going. But people don't buy the vision before they buy the person. And so, when someone's believable, they'll follow you to whatever vision you want to go to because they're not following the vision, they're following you.
Yeah.
People don't follow PowerPoints. They don't follow posters on the wall. People follow people. And that person is you when you're the leader, And so I think be intentional about that relationship, saying, hey, here's where we're going, but knowing they're trusting your character as the main thing that's going to get them there.
You're building relational equity along the way. This bank account of just investing into the person. And that way there's the first thing that goes wrong. They're not just saying, I'm finding another job. They're saying, that's an anomaly.
Yeah.
Instead of,
And things will go wrong.
Right.
Right. Because you're a human. You're going to make mistakes. But when you've deposited money in that bank account and the emotional bank account of this guy cares about me and he's invested in my success, then when he makes a mistake, I'm more likely to forgive. When he's got to make a withdrawal and there's a balance in the bank, it's going to work. But when the balances are zero, emotionally, mentally, all those ways, because you've made it just about the paycheck, then the second you screw up, now we're in the red.
Yep.
And now I'm going to give you less than 100% because you went in the red on your balance with me. So now I'm going to give you 80% effort. I'm going to do enough to not get fired.
Exactly right.
And that's where a lot of workplaces, a lot of teams go.
So
and then you're in the wheel of people coming in out of your business, and you never create that margin because you didn't invest in the person. So
I think we get to next. Let's just say you know in your head what all. This all makes sense, right? Like, it's not rocket science. It just seems like we've all worked for people that seem to be total turds, and then we've been in positions where maybe we were that person.
I am the turd.
But it's not like, knowing the right thing is not enough, right?
Yeah.
It's being able to have the discipline
Just
to be
because,
able to execute.
It's simple, but it's not easy. It's simple because you guys can talk about it, but it doesn't mean it's easy to go do.
Right.
And I think, we just mentioned discipline. That is a gateway. So if we have a vision of where we want to go or where we want to be, a plan of actual yes or no things on how to get there with both our money and our people and our team, then it just comes down to discipline. Did you do the thing that you know you were supposed to do? Talk to me about, when you say discipline, how does that unfold for you? What does that look like?
Well, discipline's really sometimes about a lot of the habits that we didn't even know we were building, like we brought up earlier about just the work habits of just overtime, putting in 80 hours a week, and just making that the routine.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't even need to work 80 hours a week anymore, but that's what we've been doing, and so therefore it just seems natural to do. So we make these small decisions, and the decisions become sort of over time built into habits. And so sometimes habits are difficult to break, replacing them with good habits. And I found for me, building good habits is totally different from breaking bad habits. Breaking bad habits is a different thing. Good habits, you can just start doing the right thing over time, and suddenly becomes the natural thing to do. But when there's a negative thing, sometimes that requires accountability. Sometimes it takes some real deep humility and self-awareness to be able to say, what I have been doing isn't working. And some of the most successful people that I know in contracting, they have a coach, they have a mentor, they have accountability. And I've had those people in my life too that just said, this is the path. and they're like, this is a great example. This is somebody that's really doing it right.
Yeah.
And you learn from that person.
Yeah.
And suddenly you have that motivation of saying, okay, here's that dream that we started off with. This guy's getting that, or he's already well on his way, and you want to emulate that. So being around the right people, right? I mean,
And being honest with those people, right?
oh boy,
'Cause
so true.
Because you don't want to surround yourself with people that only tell you what you want to hear. You need people who are going to be real with you. But sometimes I'm in that situation sometimes where I tell them enough to have to get the good job, keep going.
Yep.
But I really have these other problems I'm not being real with, And it's like, you
Yeah.
got to be vulnerable and honest. Like, hey, here's some problems I got, to someone who's walked that mile before, and to get their input and be willing to take feedback on it.
And I've found in those situations where you have that vulnerability and that honesty with somebody else, it's a beautiful thing. And these, the people that I've been open and honest with, suddenly they open up and they're honest and say, you know what, I've been in the same spot and here's
Right.
what I did. And you're like,
Yeah.
oh wow, thank you.
Yeah, because from a distance, sometimes you think no one has had the problem that you've had before. That's
Yes.
always the lie in your head is I'm the only one having this problem and this
Yeah,
issue.
and it's a lie. Yeah.
It's a lie, and you're like, well, that person's never had it because look, they're so successful. Truth is, they've probably had that time, over and over again. Like, and it's everyone fights the same struggles in their business, right?
So maybe back to the discipline thing, I think this comes down to even just looking at taking a step back. If there was a way of looking at yourself from a third person's perspective and just saying, what are the weaknesses that I have? I remember doing this one time in business and just making a list of saying, how am I doing? These are the things that I am tasking myself with doing. And how am I doing in each category?
Yeah,
D, D minus,
Yeah.
C,
Yeah.
A.
And be real. Yeah.
But there were some things that I was just failing miserably in and some things I was doing really well in. And I think when you take that step back and look at it that way, then you start realizing, well, what do I need to work on? A lot of times what I like to work on are things I'm already good at.
yeah.
We just go from strength to strength, keep crushing in that area. But the thing that I really am bad at,
Procrastinate it.
yeah, no, don't worry about that one.
Yeah, I never feel like doing the thing I'm not good at.
Yeah.
So
So it's either we get somebody else to help us in that area, or we start realizing, well, what are the steps I need to take to build discipline or get accountability in my life in order to do better in that area.
yeah. I mean, discipline is really doing the thing that you know you ought to do.
So good.
And if everyone was honest, there's a whole bunch of things in my business that I know I should do. I just simply am not doing them.
Right.
Then I can dance around that I know what I should do. And it comes down to your yes and your no.
Yeah.
And I think having a strong no to things is important.
Yes. And you take the step back and you look at the thing you're supposed to be doing and you start realizing what's the plan of action.
Yeah.
It's really making what are the next steps involved with correcting that.
Yeah.
And then getting back to the benefit from doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, the most successful habits I've built in my life are ones that were simple. I could break them down into something that was attainable.
Mm-hmm.
It's also something that was fun. It could like journaling was one thing that it was hit or miss for me. Every 6 months I would log something.
Yeah.
And I said, I really would love to look back because I enjoyed those moments that I captured 5-6 years ago. I'd see a picture of my kid and something that I wrote down, and I'd be like, that's a beautiful moment that I captured.
Yeah.
And to reflect on it 7-8 years down the road is just a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
I want to do that.
Yeah.
And so as a part of that, I was saying I need to set the realistic expectation of saying some days I'm not going to put 20 minutes into a journal. I'm going to put 2.
Yeah.
But I'm going to make it happen. I'm going to, so making that threshold something I can cross. So
Yeah.
I think sometimes we get so, like guys like me, I mean, I like to be a perfectionist. And so sometimes it doesn't happen at all because I can't do it right.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And then we start saying yes to the wrong things. We don't say no when we need to, and our life is undisciplined.
Yeah.
And we know what we ought to do. We're simply not doing it. So we talk about the discipline, which is the ability to say yes to the right places, say no to the right places. That discipline of doing the right thing ties back to the plan, which was what we are planning to do and what we know we need to get done to ladder up to that vision, which is where we want to be 5-10 years from now. And that vision is why you started.
Yep.
And that's kind of, we can, close here, close where we started, which was why did you start this to begin with? What is the vision? What's your why? Take a breath, take a step back and say, what's my dream scenario 5-10 years from now? What do I want my life to look like in my finances and my time to be financially free, financially healthy, which includes my time. And I've gotten there because I made a plan and discipline to do it. What would you say?
So simple.
Yeah, it's so simple, right? Yeah, it is. It is simple,
Yeah.
but it's not
Yeah.
easy.
Yes,
you
it's
know,
not
if it was
easy at all.
easy, we'd all do it. I mean,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
everything we said. Now I'm going to walk away from this podcast and like kick myself for all the things I know I should be doing. On my own. It's so simple.
Yeah.
And it is. It's
Right.
not complicated, but it is challenging. It is tough, and
And it's
you know,
repeating good things over time. It's,
Yeah.
if you want to be great at a sport, you're doing the right thing repeatedly.
Yeah.
You know,
If you could say one thing to the guys listening to this and saying, "Hey, I kind of lost the plot. Like I'm just swimming right now, and I forgot why I'm doing what I'm doing." What piece of advice would you give them?
I think it's really that moment of stepping back and realize one of the things that's been kind of a guiding light for me in moments of stress, moments where things weren't going the way I wanted them to go, was realizing how insignificant I am in the grand scheme of things. Life goes on without me. I don't mean this in a way of defeatism. It's just saying, you know what, the things that I think are so important really aren't. All the customers that are relying on me, they can, what's the worst thing that could happen in this situation? And so sometimes it's just taking the step back and realizing some things matter more than the things that I'm putting at the top of my priority list right now.
Yeah.
And so as soon as you take that moment to step back and you start realizing, we only live one life once.
Got one
and
shot.
We've got one shot at it. And all these things that we spend all of this time doing and worrying about and stressing about, why?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's part of back to this vision of why we started it in the first place, of having that independence, having the freedom, and that's just a powerful thing. And I think when we veer off that course, we start needing to identify, well, what went wrong, troubleshoot,
Yep.
and then make a plan of action, and then make it small enough where we're not overwhelmed.
Yeah.
The things that stick the most are the things that are attainable, things that are small enough, the bite-sized pieces
Yeah.
that we can replicate over time.
Yeah. Ben, I appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time today. That's going to wrap this episode of the Contractor Commute, building a healthy business, a financially healthy business where you've got the time and money to help accomplish the vision of what you want to go do. So thanks for listening. We'll see you next time on the Contractor Commute.
Thanks, Drew.